Nobody voted to replace the pension. It just quietly disappeared. And what replaced it shifted every ounce of risk from your employer's balance sheet onto yours. In 1980, almost 40% of private sector workers had a pension. Today, it's under 15%. Same paycheck, same career, completely different retirement math.
Here's what you're going to walk away with by the end of this. The actual mechanical difference in the pension versus 401k comparison, what your parents had versus what you have now, the 3 specific risks that got handed to you without anyone explaining it, and a real way to build your own pension, even though nobody's going to hand you one. Let's start with what a pension actually was, because most people under 55 have never had one and don't really know how it worked.
Part 1. What a pension actually promised. A pension, the technical term is a defined benefit plan, was a promise from your employer. Work here for X years, and when you retire, we will pay you a specific monthly amount for the rest of your life, guaranteed. Doesn't matter what the stock market does that year, doesn't matter how long you live.
The company took the money, invested it, hired professionals to manage it, and absorbed the consequences if the investments underperformed. If the market crashed the year before you retired, that was the company's problem. Your check showed up the same either way.
That's the piece people miss when they hear pension. It wasn't just a retirement account with a different name. It was a total transfer of 2 specific risks, investment risk and longevity risk, off of your plate and onto your employer's. Longevity risk just means, what if you live longer than expected? With a pension, that's not your problem. The check keeps coming whether you live to 78 or 98.
Part 2. What replaced it, and why harder is the right word. A 401k is a defined contribution plan. The name tells you everything. The defined part is what goes in, not what comes out. You put money in. Maybe your employer matches some of it, you choose the investments, or a target date fund chooses them for you. And from that point forward, every risk that used to sit with the company now sits with you.
This is really what people mean when they talk about 401k retirement risk. It's not one danger, it's 3, and they all landed on your desk at once, while your father's generation never had to think about any of them. You've got investment risk. If the market drops 30% the year before you retire, that's not the company's problem anymore. That's your balance, gone. And there's longevity risk. Nobody tells you how long your money needs to last, because nobody knows how long you'll live. You're building a number and hoping it's enough for a timeline you can't see the end of. And you also need to be aware of sequence of returns risk. This one is less talked about, and it's brutal. It's not just whether the market goes up or down over your whole retirement, it's the order. A bad market in your first 2 or 3 retirement years can permanently shrink how much your savings can safely support, even if the market fully recovers later. A pension never cared about sequence, but your 401k absolutely does.
Now, let's picture 2 people. Same balance at retirement, same withdrawal strategy. The only difference is which year the market drops, early or late. The person who hits a bad market in year 1 or 2 of retirement can run out of money years before the person who hits that same bad market in year 15, even though both of them, on average, experienced identical returns over their lifetime. The math doesn't care that it feels unfair. That's sequence risk, and it's entirely invisible until it happens to you.
That's the actual answer to why is this harder. It's not that you're bad at saving. It's that you inherited 3 risks your parents' generation structurally never had to manage, with no training and no warning that the handoff even happened.
Part 3. Why this happened. This wasn't one company's decision. It was decades of legal, financial, and economic pressure pushing employers away from defined benefit plans. Pension obligations are long-term liabilities that sit on a company's books for decades. Rising regulation increased the cost of running them. The shift away from manufacturing toward service and tech industries meant new companies simply never adopted them in the first place. They defaulted straight to 401ks from day one. By the time you entered the workforce, the pension wasn't disappearing. For most people your age, it was already gone before you even started.
And it's worth being precise about who still has one. Public sector workers, teachers, firefighters, police, most government employees largely still do. The divide isn't generational anymore, it's public versus private. If your parents worked for the state or the county, that's very likely where their pension came from. If they worked for a private company, the odds were already shifting under their feet by the time they retired too. They may have just caught the tail end of the old system before it closed behind them.
Part 4. Building something that behaves like a pension. Now, here's the part that actually matters, because "it's harder now" isn't useful by itself. You need something to do with it. You can't get your employer to hand you a pension back, but you can build a version of one yourself, using tools most people never learn exist. The first is an income annuity. Strip away the sales pitch and the mechanics are simple. You hand over a lump sum, and in exchange, you get a guaranteed monthly payment for the rest of your life, no matter how long that turns out to be. That's the exact same longevity guarantee a pension gave your parents, just purchased instead of employer-provided.
Vanguard's 2026 research on this is specific. Pairing a portion of a portfolio with a deferred income annuity, something in the range of 25% of the total, can meaningfully improve income security later in life without giving up all of your flexibility or growth potential on the rest. The key word there is portion. This isn't an all-or-nothing decision. Nobody's suggesting you hand over your entire 401k balance. The evidence supports using roughly 10 to 25% of assets this way, enough to cover your essential monthly expenses no matter what, while the rest of your money stays invested and growing.
There's also a specific version of this built for people catching up later, a QLAC. Fidelity describes it as a targeted tool for exactly this situation. Someone with a meaningful IRA balance who wants a guaranteed income floor covering the essentials, so Social Security and any lifetime income sources are doing the heavy lifting on the bills that absolutely have to get paid. The trade-off is real, and it's worth saying plainly. When you buy an annuity, that money is no longer liquid. You're trading flexibility for certainty. That's exactly the trade a pension made for your parents automatically. You're just choosing it deliberately instead of having it built into your job.
Let's take a breath here, because this is the part people rush past. Not every dollar needs a job. Some of it needs growth. Some of it needs to stay liquid for emergencies, and only a slice of it needs to become guaranteed income. The mistake isn't choosing the wrong tool. It's assuming there's only one tool available, the way there was with a pension. You actually get to build the mix. That's more work than your parents had to do. It's also more control than they ever had. Now, the second tool solves a different problem. The years right before that guaranteed income kicks in. If you're retiring at 65 and want to delay a bigger income source until 70, you need a bridge. A bond or CD ladder does that. You stagger a handful of bonds or CDs across the next several years, one maturing every year, so you always have money coming due without ever having to sell investments during a bad market to cover your bills.
So, unlike the annuity, you never permanently give up the principal. It matures, and it's yours again. It's lower yield, lower risk, and it exists specifically to protect you from being forced to sell investments at the worst possible moment, which is exactly what sequence of returns risk punishes you for. Say you're retiring at 65. You build a 5-year ladder, one bond or CD maturing each year through age 70. Every year that rung matures, you spend it, and you never have to touch your invested portfolio during that window, no matter what the market's doing.
By 70, the ladder's empty, your delayed income source has grown, and you never sold a single share at a loss just to pay a bill. That's the whole point. It removes the decision entirely. You're not gambling on timing your withdrawals right. The calendar does it for you.
Now, neither of these tools requires a windfall. You don't need a $2 million balance to use a small slice of it this way. The annuity and QLAC research specifically talks about a portion, not the whole thing. And a bond ladder can be built with whatever you're setting aside for the bridge years, regardless of your total balance.
Part 5. The one thing worth checking before you move anywhere. Here's one more piece, because it trips people up specifically around pensions and 401ks. Where you live in retirement changes how much of this income actually reaches you. 13 states don't tax pensions or 401k withdrawals at all. But a handful of states that fully exempt a public pension will still tax a private pension or an IRA withdrawal. It's not one category, it's several. And assuming your state's rule covers all of them is a mistake that gets discovered too late. Worth a 5-minute check before any relocation decision, not an assumption.
So let's recap. Boiling the pension versus 401k comparison down give you this. Your parents' pension guaranteed the income and put the risk on their employer. Your 401k puts investment risk, longevity risk, and sequence of returns risk on you. That's the real answer to why this is harder, not a lack of effort on your part. You can't get the old system back, but an income annuity or QLAC can rebuild the guaranteed income piece, and a bond or CD ladder can bridge the years before that guarantee kicks in. Together, they're the closest thing to building your own pension that exists today. To most people, this is a secret, so consider sharing this one. Seriously. Most people your age have no idea this shift even happened. They just know retirement feels harder than it did for their parents without knowing the why. So send it to your group chat, your sibling, your coworker who keeps saying, "I don't get how my dad retired at 62 with no stress." And subscribe so you're always working with the right information. And hit the like button if this connected some dots for you. See you on the next one.